Episode 14 with Aaron Pritchett. Had a great conversation with Aaron. It's my first time actually meeting him, and we had a great conversation. Super nice guy, super talented as well, and I really respect what he's been doing. I know you're going to really enjoy this podcast. Also, don't forget, In Session with Darren Walters is now available on Stitcher and Google Play Music. And if you're listening to it on iTunes, please rate this podcast if you could. And also subscribe, listen to all the other great episodes. We have some great ones coming up as well. So let's sit back and relax and listen to the story of Aaron Pritchett. We're here at the Chop Steakhouse in Richmond, BC. In a nice room, actually.
Beautiful building, period.
Yeah, I went to the front desk and said, hey, do you have a room like I could use for doing a podcast or something? And they said, yeah, you could rent one of our meeting facilities. I'm thinking, oh, how much is that going to cost? Well, you talk to our sales department and the catering department. I said, why don't I just walk over to the Chop Steakhouse and ask the nice girl over there? And she said, oh, yeah, we got this nice little room back at the back. And yeah, whatever you need. It's great. It's like, perfect.
Awesome. Service?
Yeah, I know. It's like, I figure it's one of those things you don't know what you can get until you ask.
Right.
And then just, don't go to the front desk.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the worst. They don't know anything. Anyway, it's nice to have you here. We're here with Aaron Pritchett, and just first time meeting.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot about you, and also I'm, friends with Shane, friends with your great drummer. And they're both great guys.
Yeah. Awesome guys.
Did a podcast with Jason a little while ago. Actually, one with Shane tomorrow. And you're lucky to have those guys in the band. They're rock solid rhythm section.
Besides being phenomenal musicians, what I did is over the years, I've been in the industry over 20 years playing with bands, and you realize certain personalities just don't work.
Yeah.
Regardless of the musicianship that they behold. And what I've always said is get rid of the poisons, get rid of the toxins. Don't stick around or keep around the guys that are bad for the rest of the group, bad seeds. And over the years, I did that. I got, I took those things out, those elements out. And you end up with guys like Shane and Jason and John Spinarski and Scott Smith, who are and Kirby Barber, who are all phenomenal people besides being amazing musicians. And I feel like the better musicians are better people anyways.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that over the years. You find, I don't want to class them as A, B, and C, but there's kind of that, classification if you want to put in musicianship. And you get the A or the A plus guys. And they just are great to work with. They don't have an ego. They don't have anything to prove. They're confident. They just have fun and deliver. And it's easy.
Yeah.
And then you find that section in the B section that they all have a little bit of an ego. They all have something they're trying to prove. They make mistakes. It's never their fault. That whole thing, and that gets to be hard to deal with.
Absolutely.
It's nice. I know years ago in my studio, I decided to take a jump up and go with the really, really great guys one time, and I was nervous about it the first session, and it's like, this is going to be difficult. And it was the best session I ever had in my life. And, they just gave myself a lot of respect. It was easy. They delivered like I've never seen anything before. And it was just like, okay, I can't go back now.
I did I was in attendance, basically. I was sitting in on a demo session in Nashville last year with Derek Rattan, who I've written with, and he's an artist as well and phenomenal person as also with all the success.
Yeah.
So we're just in Nashville at this studio, very well-known studio, but I'm sitting in and I'm not realizing anybody who's playing. And then after the session was done, all the guys came in and they said, well, this is Brent Mason and Paul Franklin. I'm like, what? And after 15 minutes of talking to these guys, you just don't realize who they are because they're so unassuming and they're super nice guys. And yet they've played on so many huge tracks over the last 30 years in country music, from, Brent Mason is Chattahoochee from Alan Jackson. He is that, and you would never know that he was that guy because he was so nice. And it really blew me away. And the best of the best, the cream of the crop, just are very humble about what they do. And they just love playing. That's really what it's all about for them.
Yeah, that's what it is. They like it so much.
Yeah.
Mike Francis back in Toronto, I'm not sure if you've worked with him before,
No.
Pepe. He was like the king kind of guitar player for years and years in Toronto and recorded on and produced tons of stuff. The first time I had him in, it was just, he's like the Brent Mason of Canada, I would say. Really diverse. And yeah, it was unbelievable. And he practices every day for hours, like hours. And he doesn't have to, but he does. And it's partially because he just loves it so much. Mm-hmm. And yeah, those sessions were just unreal. You just sit back and, okay, we need this type of solo. And it's the first time through. And it's like, yeah, we're good. That was good. I have nothing to say. Let's move on.
Yeah. It's not about the money for these guys either. That was the other thing that I realized. That you think it is, they want to make as much money as possible, and it's not really at all.
Yeah.
That's secondary. It's about playing. And, obviously a guy like that who sits and plays and practices, you just don't hear that very often. So, but they're the best of the best.
Yeah, cool. So let's go back. Were you born here in Vancouver?
I was, in Vancouver itself, at a little hospital that's now burnt down.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was it like growing up here back then as a young guy?
Well, I was only here for the first few years of my life, and I've been in BC my entire life. So I grew up a little place called Jackass, which is, believe it or not, at the foot of Jackass Mountain on Jackass Flats. 1,100 feet up from the Fraser River between Boston Bar and Lytton, BC.
Okay.
We owned a restaurant there, a truck stop. And that was the first 7 or 8 years of my life. And then we moved up to Kitimat, which is up north, where the big LNG is going to end up, apparently. Lived there for about 6 years or so. And then back in Vancouver from then on, or Langley, mostly, North Delta and Langley. And so I kind of grew up in the sticks, which goes hand in hand with my career choice.
Yeah, because there's nothing like it, especially out here. It's a different sticks than out in the sticks where I'm from. I mean, it's country where I am. I live in the country, and but it's unreal out here. It's a different way for sure.
Well, when I moved out to Langley, for example, from North Delta was considered a close suburb, yet you were far away from Vancouver. You were still considered, a suburbia. Langley was the sticks back then. This is the late 80s. And, now it went from 22,000 to 300,000 in 20 years. So it's not really so much the country, but people always said, you're moving out to the middle of nowhere, and you're going to live with cows, and it wasn't really even that much then, but it's definitely still considered a little hillbilly. You're considered hillbilly if you live in Langley.
Yeah, I can see that. So when did you get into singing? Is that something that was something that was always part of you when you were young, or how did that start out?
No, not really. I thought I was going to be an actor. I thought for a long time I wanted to be on stage or in front of a camera. And I always felt that since I was a kid. Mm-hmm. I knew I was going to be in the entertainment industry. And people say, well, you're a Leo. That goes hand in hand with being a Leo.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of Leos who are in the entertainment industry now. But I thought I was going to do that, going to be an actor. And singing just sort of happened. It was something that I enjoyed doing, but just in the shower mainly. And my mom knew I sang, and she, when karaoke first hit back in the early 90s, like about 91, I went to a karaoke with my mom, and she's like, you got to sing for me. And I said, I don't really sing. And she said, no, go sing a song. So I was like, okay, I don't know what this thing is, but I'm reading a screen and I can hear the music, so I can sing along to it, sure. And got up and sang probably one of the toughest songs anybody could ever choose to sing live. And it was Waiting for a Girl Like You from Foreigner.
Oh, yeah.
The very first song I ever sang live is a song that I've been waiting.
I was going to say it's pretty high.
Yeah. So I walked back to my seat after and just vibrating the whole way and shaking because I was so nervous. And the guy that was running the karaoke actually came up to me and he said, do you want to work for me? I was like, what are you talking about? Work for what? Carry your gear out to your car for you later? And he said, no, I want you to host these shows. You're a great singer. I was like 21 years old thinking, what? You're crazy. And sure enough, I was 20 years old. And sure enough, it just sort of snowballed from there. I mean, it's a much longer story from then, but that was the first time I sang in front of anybody and sang, period. And still didn't sing with a band for another 3 years after that.
Yeah, so it's, in a way, it's a little late, like compared to a lot of people who start singing when they're young.
Yeah.
So were you, as far as acting, were you doing any type of acting before that?
Acting somewhat. I was doing extra work in TV and movies.
Yeah.
I had an agent getting paid $5 an hour. Majority of the hours you're sitting around doing nothing. And I remember working on a few different movies, and the first real movie that I worked on was this movie called The Extras with John Travolta. Yeah. So it was funny because my mom was a huge John Travolta fan, and so I'm working every day and seeing this guy, pass me by every day and thinking this is kind of cool. 3 months of that, and I think you see my right leg. And that's it, the entire movie. And then I worked, the second movie I worked on was a really popular movie called Cousins with Ted Danson and Isabella Rossellini. And I just worked on that for a week. And you see me clear as day in this movie. And it was the first time that I ever had that experience of being on something that the entire, a large group of public would be able to see. And people actually said, were you in that movie? I saw you in that. I think that was you. So, it was kind of funny. And that was my first real time that I got to, work on a set and get to know that. And I to be honest with you, I didn't like it because it was too long of a process.
Yeah, it's really hurry up and wait, that typical saying.
Yeah, it was. And now, because I play live on stage, I get to see that reaction from these people immediately.
Yeah.
You hit the stage and everybody's going crazy, and it's an immediate thing. It's not a process that takes 8 months to finally get a movie out or a TV show. So I like the process now as opposed to being on film.
Yeah, because it's a real daunting, long days, and back, especially when you start in auditions and all that stuff. It just I don't enjoy the process.
No, no, and even shooting videos, because that's as close as I get to it. Really, I've done some TV shows and things like that, but nothing compares to playing live with a band when you shoot a video. I mean, I shot a video 3 weeks ago, still waiting to see the first cut of it. Yeah, and it's like I just want this thing out the next day. But it's too much of a long process for me.
It's interesting seeing yourself on TV or film for the first time. Yeah. But then eventually it gets to be, well, there I am, or you don't even bother looking anymore. And it's funny when you see a baseball game or anything like that, they pan over to an audience member and people freak out because they're on TV.
Yeah.
And I think as an artist, you kind of forget, well, it's just a common thing. You're on TV all the time. But for a lot of people, or most people, never get on TV.
Yeah.
Not getting anything like that. No. So that's kind of a neat thrill. I remember the first time I was on TV, and it was just back in that day. I was pretty young. Our family had a TV show, and watching, and and the phone was just, we were watching her special on TV because we never got to see it. There was no preview or anything. It was just, It's done. It's going to be on Friday night. And I remember watching, and we're like 2 minutes into it, and the phone starts ringing like crazy, and everyone's calling, "Hey, you're on TV." I know, we really want to watch it. Yeah. Just put the phone down and call us in an hour.
Right. Yeah.
But back then, that's everyone just called.
Yeah. What was really funny that I found recently was I went to a Canucks game, and I'm sitting behind one of the nets. I was about 9 rows up. So I've been on TV a lot, and like I said, I've done some movies lately and TV shows, and I've seen lots of things, videos, 30 plus videos that you get to see fairly often. Yeah. And I was at this Canucks game, and I'm looking for myself on because I saw the replay of the game the next day, and I'm looking for myself. Oh yeah, there I am. That's me. I don't know why I found that really interesting for myself, but yeah. It's kind of funny. And yeah, you're right. Hardly anybody gets the chance to be on TV. And that's really what everybody wants. I don't know why, but everybody wants to, get recognized and be seen.
Yeah. I guess now with social media, YouTube and Facebook Live, everyone has a chance to to shoot a little video and the world can see them. I mean, that's different. I mean, maybe that's why it just takes off so quickly, because it's their chance to see themselves on a public forum, and it's like being on TV at a certain
it really
certain
is
kind of way.
Yeah, for sure. You can get people to tune into it on YouTube, for example, of a live podcast, videotaping of it or whatever. But yeah, and it's everybody wants to get attention.
Yeah.
And nowadays I'm actually not about that anymore. I used to be, but not so much anymore.
Yeah, it's funny when you get older. When you're younger, it's about that, and you get older, it's like you want to disappear a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 20s, you started doing the karaoke thing. And then you said a couple years later you had started a band. Yeah,
I think before that though, I was invited to do. I guess I was in a talent search. Again, my mom.
Yeah.
She. Thanks, Mom. She turned me on to this talent search that was going on in BC, and it was a cross Canada talent search. So eventually, you'd make it to the finals in Hamilton. So she said, well, I paid the $20 and you got to pick 2 songs and they're going to play with the band. And I had no idea, what songs to play. I didn't know how to play with the band, nothing. So I went into this talent search, and it was really strange because there was a lot of very talented people that had been playing with bands for many years.
Yeah.
And here's this 22-year-old kid, barely even understands what singing, what it takes to be a singer and an entertainer. And I get up on stage with the band. 7 rounds later, I find myself in Hamilton in this Canadian finals.
Wow.
And just flying by the seat of my pants. And I met Paul Brandt there. He was the Alberta rep and I was the BC rep. Paul didn't win, but he came in second, and then his career took off and turned into, the Canadian man that he is. Yeah. And my career took a little bit longer to develop and get any success at all. Another 10 years actually from then. So it was a really great first experience, and I really got a rush out of playing with a band. It was like, wow, these guys are just, this is what I want to do.
I think it's sometimes going into the competition like that, when you don't have a background or experience, is frightening, but yet you don't know, you're just open, right?
Yeah.
So you're not thinking in your head, well, I better not do this, I better not do that, or I think I should do this. It's just, you're just yourself. So there's, I think, something that actually is really great about that. I
think for me anyways, during that competition, there was the second to last round, I think it was, the entire sound went down, and there was maybe 400 people there. And I'm singing a song. I think I was singing Shameless from Garth Brooks, which is another not easy song to sing. And the entire sound went down, and I had to react. Most people would just stop.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen. Most people just stop. I put the mic down and just sang to the crowd, and they loved it. And I was like, thankfully I did this. And I learned that right away, that no matter what, the show's got to go on in some form. And that was, for me, the turning point in understanding that I need to entertain these people even at the worst case scenario time. Yeah. And it happened, and was one of those things where people still talk about it to this day, which is a really cool thing. So yeah, you've got to, you learn on the way up, and I didn't know any better, so I just kept going.
Yeah. It's funny how those little moments where you can lose power or lose sound or something ends up being, at the moment you're thinking, oh crap, this is gonna, what are we gonna do? And it happened to us at our family theater quite a few years ago, right in the middle of a show. Bam, power all went out in the whole area. So we just grabbed our acoustics and sang the rest of the show.
Yeah.
And the same thing, people still come and talk. You remember that show when the power went? For them, they think they've got something that nobody else got. And they remember that. And you think, oh, okay, no lights, no sound, no all those things that you think that are important. And if you can still, I think that's a good test. If you can turn the lights off or turn the power off and still entertain people, you're good at what you're doing.
And then they tell other people, and they're like, wow, that must have been a cool thing to see. And yeah, it is. Yeah. We've had that in Port Alberni, I think it was. The entire power went down. We just grabbed, the organizer grabbed a bunch of candles. We sat around right at the front of the stage and played for the crowd acoustically. We didn't have all acoustics, but we had one. And then, Jason was just playing the front of the stage as a drum, and Shane or whoever was playing bass back then was just doing a boom, boom,
Oh, yeah.
It was really cool. An experience that you don't get all the time.
Yeah, yeah. So you finished a competition.
Yep.
You came back, and what was your thought? Were you thinking, okay, I got to keep trying to keep this rolling?
Yeah, I was dejected, I have to admit, because I didn't place at all. If I was out of 10th, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
But it did kind of light a bit of a fire in me, and I thought, well, I want to do this more often. So I had a band put together for me, and I started a jam out in Gabby's Country Cabaret in Langley. Mm-hmm. And every Sunday night, I got to play with these guys, and we'd play all these, live jukebox. And then it just snowballed. I was a DJ for a while at the same club, so I'd DJ, and then I'd be playing in the band as well. And that led to another club where it was a brand new club out in Pitt Meadows called Roosters, and from there, that was really another turning point for me, because I was DJing, but I was also known as the singing DJ, and I'd get up with the band, and my band would play there every couple months for the week, and then we started doing a Sunday night thing, which was a regular every Sunday for about 2.5 years. That grew and grew and grew to the point where there'd be lineups of people out the door at 7 o'clock that never got in because the place was jammed.
Yeah.
And I met a few people along the way, and they're saying, you got to turn this into something, because there is definitely something here. And this is almost 10 years later after this competition. And so we did. We started doing some recording, and it turned into a little bit of airplay here and there across the country. And I was like, it's cool. I've got music on the radio. Wild.
Yeah.
But then in 2001, a competition one more time. And I was really reluctant to go in it. I'm like, I hate competitions.
Yeah.
I just hate the feeling of, not winning.
Yeah.
And that one was, it was called Project Discovery, and it was CCMA, Canadian Country Music Association, and the SOCAN and Factor. They were all a part of putting this together. And I ended up winning that, awesome. the Canadian finals in Calgary. And I think one of the reasons why is because my fan base was built up so much in Vancouver, in the area. And even we played Calgary and Edmonton a couple times too. So that when it came time to be in the finals in Calgary at the Palace Theatre, I think the next closest person that had people there was the local guy. Mm-hmm. And he had about 8 or 10 people come and support him.
Yeah.
I had 350.
Wow.
They actually chartered 2 WestJet planes.
No way.
Yeah, to get there. And it was unreal. So my performance might not have been the greatest that night, but I'll be damned if those judges didn't want to make the wrong decision, because it could have been mayhem for them. It could have been chaos.
So how did that get put together? How did that group of people end up flying out? I mean, that was obviously you built up a huge following here in BC. Was just kind of fan based, and this kind of got put together, or
it was. I mean, it was. I like making friends, and not only was I playing, but I was also socializing with everybody. I was the DJ too, right?
Yeah.
So I was constantly socializing with all kinds of people. And when that time came and I saw that sort of response, it was like, I know everybody that's here. We're all friends. So it was more than just being a fan of my music and the band and whatever. It was more that I had that many friends and a bunch of family coming out. And
that's really
I think
awesome.
that's just it. I've connected as much as possible, especially back then, and try to now with social media. But I just connected, and I saw the results with all these 300 plus people came all that way to support.
That's pretty awesome. You don't see that very much.
No, not in something like that. No.
So where did that take you after the competition's done? You won that.
Yeah.
Did that lead to something record-wise for you?
Yeah. Well, we did. Myself and Mitch Merritt was my guitar player and intern manager at that point. We were just trying to develop. And keep in mind, this is 2001.
Yeah.
So I was 30 years old. And like I said, we recorded a few songs, and from that, I got to record another song paid for by Factor. Got to shoot a video paid for by CMT for that single.
Yeah.
And that was the first real, I'd never done a video to that point. So Stephen Goldman, who's passed away since, was the director on it and did this cool little artsy thing for a song called Consider This. And it was my first real radio single that radio took seriously, my first video ever. And from then, we also won $10,000. So we're thinking, well, we could split it between the band, or we could take that money and put it into recording. So we recorded 4 more songs.
Yeah.
And from that, we had You Can't Say I Didn't Love You, and a few other songs that we shot videos for and released as singles. And slowly but surely, by 32, I'd had my first real kind of hit song with New Frontier.
It's nice back in that day when there was that money to make videos with CMT.
Yeah.
And I remember everyone was making videos, and there was always, a nice payment to be able to do that. Now, obviously, that's disappeared.
Yeah.
Well, video industry's kind of disappeared to some degree. I mean, it's important to have one, and it's still viable, but not on CMT as much
at all. No. And back then the budget for my first video was $50,000.
Yeah.
Budget for my second video is $35,000-$40,000, and then slowly over the years, like we do, cat out of the bag, but we do them for much, much less now.
Yeah.
And we get the same sort of results, but you're not getting any, you're not getting paid for them anymore. So it's tough to validate doing a video, and saying, oh, well, we're going to make lots of money off it. You make nothing off of videos unless you get over a certain amount on views on YouTube, and even then, you still don't see much back.
No, it's just like a form of advertising.
It is. It's a business card. That's what I say.
Yeah,
it's a business card to try and get the people out to the shows.
Yeah, it's back in the day it was, well, I guess it's kind of like recording now. I mean, back 20 years ago, you were going into big studios, paying a lot of money. And the same thing with video. You had to have the big equipment. Now you can shoot videos with, a DSLR. And
I've seen them with iPhones.
Yeah.
And they're not that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can edit them. Yeah.
And it's nice. Now you can record at home. It's a much cheaper process than it used to be. I remember seeing people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on albums that now you could do for 10, it's, and they would take that money and they would record for, there's this great story where, I forget the band, and, they spent like $500,000 on this album.
Wow.
And they took it into the record company and they didn't like it. They said, you have to redo a bunch of stuff. And at that time, it's part of the record company exec wanting to put his finger on it, right? So they got a bunch more money, like another $100,000 or something like that, and they went into the studio and brought in pool tables, a bar, and all this stuff, and they just spent the whole $100,000 on partying.
Wow.
Then they took the same project, the same masters, resubmitted them, and they said, "Great, much better." And the record executive thought it was much better. That sounds way better. Thank you for doing that. And they just blew away all the $100,000.
Wow.
But that's,
we've done that too.
Yeah.
In the past, we've submitted an album, and I remember actually CMT. We submitted a video. Yeah. That's what it was. It wasn't the music, but we submitted a video with a certain edit. They sent it back and said, well, we need to see some changes. They weren't specific on any scenes or anything like that. Took about another week and a half, submitted the same video, and they said, that's way better.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that frustrating?
Why would you, Oh, it's just ridiculous. But you know what? That's the thing too, is that nowadays you really got to watch out for the labels spending money, because they'll spend money and the artists owe it back.
Yeah.
And nowadays you're not making much money from record sales, because there is no real CD sales or and the online sales just aren't enough to make any money off of all the record labels are basically making all that money back. So they better be good, because your live show better be good too, because that's where you're making your money these days. Yeah,
it's tough now because everyone's dipping in like crazy, and it's all off the top. So I know that I'm not going to name the artist, but there's real popular artist that was touring just over the last year in Canada, and they were at a venue in Ontario, and the day of the show, it's a small venue, maybe 700 seats. The day of the venue, Ticketmaster still had, it was either Ticketmaster or management still had 100 tickets on hold. And they decided for themselves. And the venue only seats 600. So the artist doesn't know.
No.
They're not keeping track of that. And that's their money. I mean, that's the extra money they're going to make. And then last minute, they decided to release them because they didn't need them.
Right.
And it's like, who's keeping track of that stuff, right? And it's just, there's a lot of that going on, you see, and it's hard. I mean, you're busy, you're out doing interviews, you got to keep everything rolling, and there's all these people looking after you.
Yeah.
And you got to keep track of all those people.
It's tough to do.
Yeah.
Because there is information that you're just not given.
Yeah.
I was told once, you're on a need to know basis and you don't need to know. What? No, I do need to know.
You do.
Yeah, I want to know, but you don't always get that information until later.
No,
which is terrible, but it's the industry. So it's
some of it you have to live with, and it is what it is. But it's frustrating when you see, touring Canada's it's difficult. And you start carrying a bus or you start carrying a transport with you, you start wanting to compete and doing those big things. That all adds up really, really quick.
Yeah.
And, agent, manager, all those things, starts getting scraped off the top. It's not much left over for the artist at the end.
No, I mean, I'm learning that with my tour coming up in January. We go out for 6 weeks in January and February. And, I take care of all those costs. So I'm budgeting for the bus and just my jaw is dropping.
Yeah.
You see that big number that you're making, the gross potential of the tour, and then you take off all these numbers, the agent, management, and label take of gross as opposed to of net.
Yeah.
So
you're taking before all the expenses are.
Yeah, big percentage. And it's like, okay, well, that's gone. Okay. And the bus is gone and the hotels and all these different costs. And then you're like, okay, well, I think I might be able to buy, 2 weeks of groceries after I'm done. But at the same time, optically, it looks great. So,
yeah,
I mean, there's got to be an upside too. And eventually that does pay off. But in the meantime, the artist, and most musicians don't know that are working for these artists, and the label and management and agency, it's not like they don't really care, but that's just the way it is. That's the way it goes. So they don't realize that you're probably making the least out of everybody at the end of the day.
Yeah. And nobody, I always said, and I think I've mentioned in the podcast before, I think everyone on the team should take the leader's position for a while and look at, it costs this, or it costs that, or this would, because they always think it looks, how come we're staying here tonight? It's like, well, because it's a down day, we're not making any money, and the bus is costing, $2 or $3 grand a day, and there's production on the road, and
do you want to see my budget?
Yeah.
I've done a budget on it. Yeah. You don't want to see it.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
So, zip back again.
Sure.
You finished that second contest that you won. So, got that first single and videos going. And were you looking at, were you at the record deal at that point? Were you signed with anybody or?
No, I wasn't signed directly to anybody, and I've never actually had a major label direct signing ever. Yeah. I've always been affiliated through another label, and the first label that came on board was in 2005. I signed with Fusion 3, which is a guy named Mike Denny was working for them at the time, and they had another label called Just in Time, which was more of a jazz label, and they'd never really dipped into the country scene, but Mike Denny had this feeling. He's like, I really want to work with you guys. And I think we had Sony. We had a couple other labels that were interested. But Mitch and I both had a feeling about Mike Denny. Yeah. There's something cool about this guy that he seems really motivated, as opposed to being lumped in with a bunch of other artists on a major label. So we took a risk, and that was the Big Wheel album. That, again, every album that I do, even up to this day, I don't know. I can't see the success that's going to happen from it. I'm just taking a chance.
Yeah.
And it turned out the Big Wheel, the single Big Wheel, even to this day, is my most successful single at radio. It went to number 2. I never got a number 1 song. And a funny story behind the song Big Wheel, I wrote it with Mitch and Daryl Burgess, who's a phenomenal writer and just an awesome guy. He co-wrote Just Came Back to Say Goodbye for Colin James, and that was one of his big first hits. He's written several since, but we wrote this song, and after we wrote it in Nashville with Daryl, I hated it. I couldn't stand this song. I thought, this is garbage. And Mitch said, no, it's a great song. I think it's going to be a hit song. I'm like, no, there's no chance. Label heard it. They loved it. They wanted to release it as the first single and name the album after it. And I'm like, well, I guess that was a fun career. I guess I'm done now. So, and it goes to radio and becomes my biggest hit so far, charting wise on Canadian radio. So, and then the success of that album, Mike was so motivated, like we thought he was, and pushed that record so hard, and we did extremely well on it. The following single was Hold My Beer. And the funny thing is that Big Wheel did so well at radio. By the time we released Hold My Beer, it wasn't getting added right away. People loved the song, and it was this sort of cult hit at first and then turned into a radio loved it, but they were playing Big Wheel so much for so long that Hold My Beer only went to number 10. It hit top 10, but it didn't go to any higher because they were spinning both of them at the same time, which was great. But
there's still lots of life on that first one.
So that was the next phase, was working with Fusion 3 and Mike Denny, who is now MDM, Mike Denny Music. So
it's funny how if you take a look at a lot of artists, big artists, they have huge songs, but that first 1 or 2 songs are always the songs that really people want to hear in the show. The new hit could be bigger, you could be number 1, but you take a look at anybody, Garth or anybody, you want to hear those first couple songs mean a lot to everybody. And they're probably still really exciting to play because there's history and there's everything there. It's, people really react to it. It's interesting.
And I find it really cool that 12, 13 years later, after releasing those singles, especially Hold My Beer. Hold My Beer is it is my career song. I don't think I'll ever have another Hold My Beer. And very few people get that anthem song, like a Friends in Low Places for Garth Brooks, for example, or Chattahoochee, like I said, with Alan Jackson. Very few people get that song. That resonated so much. And the really great effect now is, back then when I released it, I had parents coming up to me saying, my 2-year-old singing this song, won't stop singing Hold My Beer, 3-year-old, 4-year-old. But what I'm seeing now, 13, 14 years later almost, is that those kids that were singing that back then are coming to the shows.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm seeing these, late teens, early 20s kids that loved the song as a kid and coming out to the shows and singing along and, chanting along to Hold My Beer.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I know I used to play with Jason McCoy and it, Dixieland was that song you always almost have to end with.
Born Again, Dixieland.
He's had lots of huge success of other songs, but that's that one song that kind of, it's kind of his anthem song to some extent. And everyone sort of seems to have, a song. It may not be the anthem song. But yeah, it's neat to be able to have that in your repertoire. You probably end with that one, right?
Always. Yeah. We do something special with it too. We do a medley of different songs leading up to it to get people into singing along. And then, but actually the first time, we released that, I think, in May of 2006. And in June or early July, we were playing it at Doffin's Country Fest in Manitoba, Dauphin. And I didn't know if anybody would know this song yet. I didn't know how it was doing on radio. I wasn't following it that closely, thinking, well, it's kind of a dumb song, but people might like it. There might be some sort of an effect from it, but whatever. So we came off stage and we're ready to do the encore, which was Big Wheel. And then we were going to teach them Hold My Beer. And as I got off stage, my tour manager at the time, Carmen, came up to me and she's like, I had in-ear buds on. So she's like, pull your buds out of your ears. Why? I pulled them out and all I could hear was, oh, my bear, oh, my bear. 20,000 people in the grandstand, chanting Hold My Beer. And I was like, that's okay. This song really is hitting.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments where I just got shivers actually.
Yeah.
That you realize, wow, I've made a bit of an effect in this industry. And all I wanted was one single on radio and one video ever. And, here it was several in and then having that sort of an effect. And it still has that effect.
So when that song was done it's big, in the back of your mind, were you thinking, how am I going to top this one? Or were you not worried about it?
No, I think a lot of people do think that. A lot of artists go, okay, well, not to compare, the popularity of the song, but Carly Rae Jepsen, for example, with Call Me Maybe, I wonder if she thought, wow, am I going to be able to top this? And she's released songs since that, just haven't had that effect that Call Me Maybe has. And that was an international smash hit. But no, I thought after that, I was like, okay, cool. This is great. But I have other music that I think is going to be accepted just as well. And every now and then I'd put out a song like Light It Up or Let's Get Rowdy that I thought was one of those anthem sort of things. Yeah. And it worked, but nothing to the extent of Hold My Beer. But I've accepted the idea that I'll probably never have another Hold My Beer, no matter how hard I try. And I'm good with that. I don't want to be known for too many of those songs, because you want those serious songs. You want those just as fun songs. But I have no problem. And I think Garth Brooks, for example, not to compare myself to Garth, but I think Garth Brooks would be the same person. Is like, I'm happy with that one. And that's all I really need for that, to have the crowd going crazy for that one song and then singing along to all the other ones that he put out as well. So, I'm still releasing music that people are singing along to, like Worth a Shot, and hopefully Better When I Do, the new single. I hope they have the same effect, that people are singing along to them, but they're always looking for us to play Hold My Beer. Yeah.
Which is great. I mean,
I love it.
Yeah. If you get tired of it, or it's that's tough, but it seems like, it's good because you've accepted that in a way that, and it's important, you have to. Because you see a lot of people, they just keep chasing that one song, and it's tough. It's really difficult for them. You see them just go downhill, and they're fighting for that. I want another one of those. I want another one of those, and
not me.
Yeah, that's
it's
really
great. I look forward to playing it at the end of the night too. At the end of the show, it's I love playing all my other music and having people sing along and know them. Yeah, but Hold My Beer is that one song that I'm always really looking forward to playing. And we save it for the very end, not to give anything away in the show, but we save it for the very end, and it's a great way to end off the show. And I'm always, vibrating and just ecstatic that people were singing along to it.
I remember years ago I saw the Mavericks, and they were maybe 4 singles in, maybe 5, and I can't remember the name of the song, but it was a big hit on the radio at the time. Was their biggest. And they led their show with it.
Really?
Yeah. And I sat there, it's like, wow, that's awesome and bizarre all at the same time. Yeah. But I think because their thought, maybe because it was up in Canada, maybe people know us.
Right.
Let's give them something that they
really know.
Right. Yeah. And capture them right off the top. Mm-hmm. And then we'll just do our regular stuff. And they didn't button it at the end with that same song again. They just right off the shoot, this is her biggest song right off the top. And I think I've never seen anyone do that.
I've had that suggested about Hold My Beer several times. Why don't you start with Hold My Beer? I mean, really get them into it. I was like, no, they know it's coming. Yeah. You don't want to, blow it all at the very beginning and then, have good songs for the rest of it that they might be able to sing along to, but they won't. And then somebody also had suggested, why don't you bookend the show with it? And I've seen other bands do that with their big hits. They start with them and then end with them. And I think it's really anticlimactic at the very end to do it again. Yeah. I always save the best for last. And I try and start it off with a bang and end it off with a bigger bang and then leave them wanting more. So
yeah, it's a good idea. So obviously working a lot in BC, if you ever thought, I mean, it's different, out here than it is. Yeah. I find the rest of the country. It's, you're separated by those mountains, right?
Yeah.
And so if you ever felt any positive negatives about being a West Coast singer or compared to being anywhere else, I feel nowadays that, I felt Ontario for quite a while kind of was leading the pack. A lot of the musicians and a lot of singers all coming from Ontario. Now it's really shifted west, where, you know, it seems like a lot of the hot players now are from the west, and you know, it's really
production
come on. It's really come on strong. I think it's really great. Did you ever feel that? Okay, I'm from BC. I have to fight a little harder.
When I first got into the industry and releasing music, people were going, "You're from Vancouver? How can a Vancouver guy be a country artist?"
Yeah.
Kind of like I was looking at people from Toronto in that area. I'm like, how could those people be country artists? It's, you know, it's big smoke.
Yeah.
But back in that time frame, between 1993 and 2004, there was more live venues to play in Vancouver for country music than there was in Calgary and Edmonton combined.
Yeah.
And they were really surprised by that. So there was a lot of places for us to cut our teeth. And I was really the first big artist, I guess, out of Vancouver and BC that really hit up to that point.
Yeah.
Since there's been, you know, Chad Brownlee, Dallas Smith, and Madeline Merlot at the time, and all these different artists that come out of Vancouver and in British Columbia. But yeah, a lot of people were questioning it at first, and then they listened to the music and they're like, wow, this is really cool. Which producer did you use in Nashville, or which studio did you record in Nashville? I said, actually, I used Tom McKillop, who's from Maple Ridge, British Columbia, and we recorded at the Warehouse in Vancouver, Warehouse Studio. So people were really shocked by that. And I think, not that I changed the industry, but I've had radio people come up and go, wow, New Frontier changed the face of Canadian country radio with Canadian country music. And I didn't realize it at the time. And they said, and especially the fact that you recorded it all and used Canadian players, producers, and studios. And I was like, well, I just went with what I thought was right, made the right sound. And ever since then, you're seeing a lot of artists producing and recording and using producers from Canada all over the country.
Yeah, and we can produce this as good as Nashville.
Absolutely.
You know, I always have people say, "Oh, we got to go to Nashville to record." I said, "No, you don't. You can do it just as great up here." I think there was a time at one point where a lot of radio people were looking at who was playing on it, where it was recorded, and who produced it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that happens as much anymore, because it's more of a, you know, every station's owned by one big company anyway. So it's not as if you have to individually get every radio station to kind of play your song anymore. Right. It's a different thing. I think back at a certain time, programmers really looked at that. And if it came from Nashville, it had a bit of merit to it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that is the case as much anymore. And I think part of it too is that Canadians have proved that we can produce, you know, really great music here and not have to go to Nashville. And, you know, back in the day, I remember everyone would go to Nashville, record, and then they come back up to Canada and re-record the album to make Canadian content regulations. And it's like what you heard in Canada was the $5,000 version of the album, not the $50,000 version. And nobody really knew it, you know?
No.
It was bizarre.
Yeah. Rick Hutt, I think, was, you know, back in Ontario recording Beverly Mahood, Jason, I think, and maybe Jason Berry was doing a lot of production at the time for Jason McCoy. His sound was, you know, as American as he could possibly get it. And we sort of took that idea and went, well, let's even try and amp it up even further, because all the guys that I was working with, Tom McKillop, for example, lived in Nashville for several years and learned their systems and learned their sounds. So he was kind of the guy who was a little further ahead. And we bucked the stereotype with guys like Rick Hutt and with Tom McKillop, where we went, you know what, we can make just as great an album as, you know, we're not going to be having the $100,000 budget for an album, but we've got 50, and we can make a really great record that is, you know, pretty close to the sound of the Americans that are getting airplay at the time.
Yeah.
And it started snowballing, and then everybody started realizing, wow, we've got some amazing players here with some killer studios. You know, the Armory, for example, in Vancouver. I've only ever recorded in Vancouver. And the Warehouse was a world-class studio, Bryan Adams' studio, that was phenomenal. So, you know, when we started using that and changing radio's mind. And you know, like you said, the Canadian content, that maple, MAPL, you have to have 2 out of 4 of those. Well, now you're seeing 3 and 4 of those little pizza pies colored. So it's pretty awesome to see. And I'm glad that I was a part of that shift, you know, in that time period.
Yeah.
That made people realize we can do it up here.
Yeah, I worked with Rick for years. I worked at Cedar Tree, and I learned a lot from Rick and that whole team there. And we're doing Jamie's albums and Bev, and I remember working with Bev when she was like 13,
Just
14.
a kid, yeah.
And
she still is a kid.
Yeah, I know. We've been chatting about doing a podcast. We'd have a lot because we grew up a lot at the same time, and I know a lot about her beginning years and stuff. And but yeah, it's nice that the recording industry is really growing, and you know, you can go and lay your beds down at a great studio, come back and just work on your vocals on yourself.
I know.
You know, it's so great being able to do that. You can do it anywhere. I mean, here we are in a restaurant.
As long as you have a computer.
Yeah, away you go. It's pretty awesome. I mean, it's really changed how people can produce their album, and just it saves a lot of money too. I mean,
I can give a perfect example. My last 2 records that I've made, I still call them records, even though they're not. I mean, they've been on vinyl, but not many people buy them. When we do an album, when Scott Cook is my producer, Scotty Chops, when he produces an album, basically all I do is send him the song, the demo, from his computer or at home. He'll lay down the beds that he needs, and then flies it, as he calls them, sends basically an email to a guitar player wherever, Toronto, across the street. The guy will play on the track, send it back, and before you know it, we've got this production that nobody's actually even left their home. I come in and do a vocal at Scott's house because he's got this really cool setup in this tiny little room, which would be considered a closet in most places. I do the vocals, and before you know it, we've got this big sounding production that people are thinking, wow, you must have gone to a huge studio and recorded this. Meanwhile, like I said, you don't even have to leave your bed if you don't want to in order to do this. So production's definitely changed from those days where we were at the warehouse for, you know, a month and a half. You know, coming up with these really great live studio sounding albums, and then, you know, they still sound like that, but they're all done remotely.
Yeah. I mean, I like both ways.
Yep. So do I.
There's things I miss now about, I like being there when someone puts something down.
Yeah.
And it's neat to be able to send it, and it comes back and it's like, okay, wow, that's really good. But then there's always that time you've been in the studio in front of a player and they play something that they're not thinking is any good.
Right.
But all of a sudden you go, oh yeah, that lick you just did there. You always wonder, did I miss that? Right. If I wasn't there, did I miss something that I could have got? But, you know,
I'm positive it does happen for sure.
Yeah. You know, but then again, it's nice not to have to sit for forever and go through the process. And yeah, I hated the long.
Well, again, it's the same as shooting a movie or TV show. As an actor, you're waiting. And for me as a singer, I'm listening to, you know, maybe 25% of the day that you're in a studio is actual, you know, recording time.
Yeah.
That's what I found. A lot of it's set up, a lot of it's going through charts, and a lot of it's, you know, details that are, you know, I napped, I think, most of the time I was in a studio, you know, laying on a couch. But there is an element too of the hang. I love hanging with these guys. I love sitting behind the board and listening to what they're creating, you know, in that 25% of the day. But man, you miss that. That's what I missed mostly. I got to tell you a cool story about my first experience in a studio, an actual studio. It was the warehouse. We managed to get it to record 4 songs. I thought, well, this is crazy. This is Bryan Adams' studio. It's awesome. But what I didn't realize was the reputation that it carried, and people wanted to record there. So my very first time in a studio, I walk in and talking to people. Upstairs from us was AC/DC mixing an album.
Yeah.
I can't remember what album it was. This is 2003, 2002. Downstairs is REM
Wow.
adding extra vocals and all kinds of overdubs. And then the next week is Elton John, and we're still there when Elton John's in the tracking room and we're upstairs.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is my first experience here. And then you get to see, Nickelback was just starting to hit really back then. And Chad was there quite a bit, doing certain things. And it was just like, wow, this is my first introduction to the industry of people that I listened to my entire life and hold in a really high regard musically. And that was really cool. Since then, I mean, the studios just aren't used like that anymore. So not near as much, but it was a really great first experience to go, wow, I feel like I'm actually in this industry now.
It's interesting when you're recording, spending a long time working on things. I always find that you can always overthink things. And I think that's the thing with nowadays, you just kind of get right at it, which is really, really good. And that ends up being most of the time your best material. I always find that. Always make sure you're recording that, even if it's just a first run through.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get just that magic that happens on the first take. And there's been a couple times I was just, let's just run it and you
see what happens.
Yeah. And we'll get to recording in a minute, and then it passes. It's like, oh, damn, I should have recorded that one.
Well,
did that like once or twice and never happened again. I'll always be ready to record.
Scott Cook for me was that guy that said, the first time you sang into a microphone that I heard, I knew the next time you sang, I have to press record. And from then on, it doesn't matter. Because he said your first takes are usually your best takes.
Yeah.
And it's, you're just running, you're not overthinking anything. And then when you're by the fifth or sixth take, he said you've overthought things too much by that point. So I go in the studio now for these last singles that I recorded. It's only 6 songs. It's an EP. Out on the Town is the lead, or it's not the lead single. It's the title track on the album. And I did one take on that. And he said, that's all we need.
Yeah.
It's good. We're great. You knew what you were looking for when you came in, and we don't need anything else. And that's what you hear on the actual album. So, whereas with Tom McKillop, when I was recording with him, we would go through a song, recording a vocal for a single, and it would be 12, 15, 20 times. And then we'd we'd do pieces of the song at a time. And that would take, 5-6 hours to do one song sometimes, which was just grueling. And by the end of it, I can barely talk, and I'm tired, I'm exhausted, and, my level of energy for the song is done.
Yeah.
We'd always come up with a good comp, but now it's just like I come in and boom, 1, 2, maybe 3 takes, comp that together, got ourselves a song. It's like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah. And part of that probably is experience too, and done it
confidence
a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I know with clients in the past, I don't like taking 20 takes. I'd rather 3 or 4 if it's feeling, okay, let's jump to this song and let's do a couple. Let's jump over to this song. And then if it's not feeling well, it's like, all right, well, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then fresh again the next day and see if because sometimes it's just, you're not in a good mood, or you're not focused, you're not, something's happening at home, or all those things, and all of a sudden it affects your vocal completely. Yeah. And the next day you can come in and bam, it's the first time, and it's like, okay, that's what we wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've had that many times. Personal life plays a huge role in your energy and emotion that you're putting into a song, especially if it's a slower song.
Yeah.
I've had days with Scott where, I was living on an island, and it took me a long time to get over to Langley to record the vocal and get in there, and within 2 or 3 takes, it's like, today's not the day.
Yeah.
And just walk out, go, okay, tomorrow or next week, and then come back, and it's 1 take, 2 takes, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it takes a good producer to know, you got to know somebody, and it's like, you're almost part psychiatrist. As a producer, I think, those times you have to sit and, find out, hey, what's going on? And I always like to do that. Just someone comes in, hey, how's it going? You get a feel how the person is.
Yeah.
Then you have in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, what are we going to do today?
Yeah.
I remember with McCoy once, we were recording vocals, and I can't remember, there was lots of stuff going on, and with him, he wasn't just focusing on what he had to do, and it was, I can't remember what song it was. So I was like, all right, it's a real high energy song. So it was like 2:00, and I knew there was a matinee starting down the road at the movie theater, and it was I got to remember what song it was or what movie it was. It was a real action movie.
Yeah.
I said, let's go see that. And he's like, really? I said, yeah. So we went, saw the movie, and we both walked out just pumped, right? And it was just like, yeah, that was a great movie. And I just floored it all the way back to the studio. And we went in, and that first take, we got it, right? It was like, he just cleared his mind.
That's awesome.
He was focused on that. It was pumped up.
Yeah.
And it's like, there it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what it, that's
a little
what
motivation.
Yeah.
Need some motivation. Yeah. I've definitely come in overthinking a song before I even start singing it. That can play a role. But yeah, when there's other motivational, reasons for it, you can get a great performance.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
So live shows, how do you approach putting your live shows together? I know they're pretty high energy, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very high energy. Sometimes I'm wringing my shirt out from all the sweat. It's disgusting, but, I like to run around the stage, and I did play guitar on stage for a while, and thinking, well, this needs to be in my show because I want people to see that I can play an instrument of some kind, even though not great. But I decided, you know what, I'm more about the energy towards the crowd, and I need to, be with them. I need to make them feel like I'm in the crowd with them and that they're up on stage with me. So I just drop my guitar and run around the stage now. And, there are moments, obviously, where we have to slow it down. And some songs are, one of Momma's Boy Meets a Daddy's Girl is one of those emotional songs that you got to slow it down. But people like that.
Yeah.
They like the, diversity in songs. And then, when you hit the slower times, the energy doesn't drop. It's kind of cool. Like we've managed to, and I think it's a really great testament to how hard the guys in the band work. And know they understand the crowd as well.
Yeah.
They don't lose any energy when we're playing a slower song. So yeah, it's pretty nonstop. And like I said, I always try to start it off with a big bang and put it right in their face. And then by the end of it, they're screaming and chanting, "Hold my beer," and leave them wanting us to come back.
That's cool. Do you find you change your set at all as you're going different places, or depending where you're playing, and or do you keep it kind of locked in? This is what we're doing.
I change the set constantly, and I think that's something I really involve the band in, because I really want them to be a part of, how it feels for them on stage, plus guitar changes and things like that. But as I get a new single, for example, so Better When I Do is the new single, just came out this past week. It's already in the set, but where do we put it in the set, and what do we have to move in order to make it make sense? So I've always wanted to have great structure to a set, and I never wanted to repeat the exact same set for too long, because I don't want to. If I went to Peterborough, a year and a half ago, and now I'm back, I don't want them hearing the same set and thinking, well, I've seen bands do that, and it's too predictable, and there's nothing, exciting about a set list that's exactly the same. So I constantly change the set and then inject different things into it, moments that I don't repeat, try not to repeat for too long.
Yeah.
The same things I said, or same jokes, or same, introductions to a song that has like a track introduction of some kind. Shane is great for that. He's amazing at it, actually. And he breaks down the set as well and goes, well, you know what? Before this song, we should do this. We should have this, like, for a little while we had Suntan City, which is a single of mine that was a Luke Bryan song. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of it, there's this cowbell. So Shane was like, we should do that before anybody else did it. We should do that. I got a fever. The only prescription is more cowbell. And we did it, and everybody loved it. Mm-hmm. But again, you can't do that for too long. So, inject these kind of fun little things and keep them interested and excited.
It's good that you have a good involvement with your band that way. It's important, I think, because it makes them feel more a part of the show as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of acts who, their band is separate from them, and you feel that. Yeah, you can really, really feel that. But
we're a family.
Yeah.
We've all said that. We're a tight family and have each other's backs. Nobody's too hard on each other. And when there's anything that goes wrong, for example, or somebody plays a bad note, it's like, that's no big deal. It's just, we'll get through it, whatever the case is. And I'm not an artist that's like, well, I'm the artist. I do have to make a lot of decisions. So they always call me boss, but it's always tongue in cheek, I think.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, that my band or our band has to be all involved with each other about that show. And even off stage, we all have to be on the same page when we're traveling together. And we're a family.
Yeah, it's good. You can tell, even social media wise, you can tell when you're on the road, everyone's, having a good time, and you can just see it without having to even be there. So
that's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's really great. So you got some new music out now.
Mm-hmm.
What's kind of in the future for you looking next year or two down the road?
Well, there's lots. Riding on the success of Dirt Road Denim from 2016. Out of the Blue was another big hit. Mama's Boy. And then released Worth a Shot earlier this year that just rode the charts. I think Big Wheel was the only other major successful single like Worth a Shot's been. And then the new single came out, like I said, Better When I Do, just on this past Wednesday. And the album is due out in January, which it coincides with the tour on the same day, actually, January 11th. The album's being released, or the EP, 6-song EP. And from then we'll tour across Canada, right from Vancouver Island all the way out to Nova Scotia within about 6 weeks. And then keep the ball rolling. We got another single or two off of this EP. And who knows? I mean, at this age, I know that, a lot of people don't consider me old, but I've been around the industry for a long time, and to get this airplay that I'm getting and still being relevant and having success is a really great feeling. And it's all I know how to do anyways. I just like to go out and entertain people and try and put on a show and have them sing along to the songs that I hope they know from radio and from iTunes and Spotify and all these different online formats. And just keep going. I think I'll be 90 years old singing Hold My Beer, maybe Hold My Oxygen Tank by that point.
Hold My Boost.
Yeah.
So have you ever spent much time working or worrying about being successful in the US, or it's never been really too important to you? Or
no, I think back in the late 90s, I really wanted to try and explore that. I really had a major decision to make back in about 97, 98. And at that point I had 2 kids, married, and I have 3 kids now, 3 boys. But I only had 2, and I was like, I don't know if I want this. What does this mean for my family, first and foremost? My career may take off, who knows? But that might take a long time. It may never happen. But the risk I was taking that I thought was more important was with the family. Do I want to take my family and transplant them to the States? I was never a huge fan of the States, to be honest with you. And in Nashville, I didn't know the culture. I didn't understand what the city was all about. I just knew it was country music industry. Yeah. And I didn't really want to take that away from my boys. I wanted them growing up to be Canadian kids, and like I did. I grew up in a small town, and I didn't want them to lose their identity as Canadian kids, and they didn't. They've grown up being amazing men now, and they got to be in the Canadian culture. They're huge hockey fans. They play street hockey. They, love Canadian music. And they're in music themselves also. So, and people still ask me, even at this age, people are still asking me. So do you tour in the States, or have you ever, or are you planning on it, or do you still want to go and try and get your music onto radio in the States? I have zero desire to do that. Yeah. I love being a Canadian artist. I love touring Canada. And now, as my career continues on, but, maybe in the last 10 years or so of having that sort of relevance and success, I'm okay with doing 30 shows a year. As opposed to constantly touring in the States, and the side effects, even from the Canadian industry, there's negative side effects. It's ruined many things in my life, just being on the road constantly, even though it's only Canada. Not ruined, but just really affected them in a negative way. So now that's being a Canadian artist still, and not touring as much. It's great because now I focus way more on my family and way more on my friends than I ever did before. So I have no desire to go to the States, and
That's
never
good.
really have.
Yeah, because it's, there's a lot of artists that have done that, gone to the States, and the majority of them all just ended back in Canada again, right? I mean, you've had a little bit of success. It's such a hard market to break.
Yeah.
And it's almost, nowadays, it's, if you can make it in Canada, which you've done a really fantastic job at, I think it's almost more of a accomplishment that you didn't have to go to the States to get where you are now.
It's
And
a good way to look at it.
yeah, I mean, it is, because, everyone just thought, well, you have to go to Nashville, you have to have a big song there to be
Right.
recognized in Canada and accepted to a certain degree. And it's, it's changed there quite a bit. And you see a lot of Canadian artists doing big tours,
Yeah.
and they have big songs in Canada, and nobody knows who they are in the US.
Yeah.
And that's great, and that's fine. I mean, I'd rather have that than have a little bit of success in Nashville
Yeah.
and then have to come back and just kind of keep it going, because it almost feels like you're defeated to some degree, or
Right.
it's hard. It's mentally hard, I think, for people to
Very
go
mentally.
through that.
Yeah, it's very mentally hard. I've seen people go through it in the States, and you can get your 1% of the population, or 1% of singers and artists get to have their songs on the radio in the States and Canada.
Yeah.
And then out of those in the States, there's only 1% that actually get to become big stars and, tour for the rest of their lives. I wasn't willing to take that chance. I still thought, well, you know what? Even if I'm in Canada, I can stay in the music industry somehow. If I stop being a touring artist and recording artist that gets songs on the radio. Down there, it's a little tougher. Like, I've seen artists that had, pretty decent success, but they're working jobs now.
Yeah.
Because they have to. Whereas in Canada, you can still stay in the industry if you do it right. So yeah, and they always do come back. I think majority of them, anyways.
Yeah,
I
it's
know
few that stay,
several
but-
that have stayed.
Yeah.
But even then, they're staying, but they're not. Well, I wouldn't say that they're extremely successful still, and some of them do have day jobs now,
Yeah.
which is kind of weird.
Yeah, and it's like I said, kudos to you for sticking it in here in Canada and really making
Thanks.
it successful. And I think it's smart, and it's nice to be able to be a Canadian and be a Canadian artist, and now, like I said, not worry about having to
Yeah.
do that in America. It's a money drain, and it's a mental drain, and it's fun touring Canada.
Sure.
I love touring Canada. It's a pain in the butt, but
Well, especially when you got to travel in January and February
Yeah.
through. I'm going across Canada, and it's that's not the very exciting thing.
it's a
but
smart time to tour. That's
Yeah.
that's the time to go out.
when people need to get out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
They want to be able to get out of the confinements of winter and
doldrums.
have a good time. So
Yep.
well, I know we're getting on here, but I appreciate you dropping by and spending some time, and it was an interesting podcast for sure. And
It's been my pleasure.
it's
Thanks.
hopefully I know you're going to be down in Ontario on your tour, so hopefully I am going to be home, I think. So
Oh, yeah?
hopefully I'll come out.
Please come out and see.
Love to see
Come-
the show.
Yeah, we'll get you into the show.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Well, once again, what's the best way to find you on the interwebs?
Oh, there's lots of different ways. Believe me, I'm not hard to find. Well, with the social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, it's just Aaron Pritchett. I have a website, aaron-pritchett.com. And if you're looking for tickets on the tour, go there. All the links for all the shows are up there. And if we're in your area or close, come on down.
So
see
it
the show.
starts January what?
January 11th is the
Yeah.
first show in Sydney, near Victoria,
Yeah.
on Vancouver Island. And then we do stops all over British Columbia, going Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec. We've got a couple shows in
nice.
Quebec, and ended in Nova Scotia. And on I think it's February 24th is the last show.
Awesome. Well, success on that, and success on next few years in your career. And it's been lots of fun chatting, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks.
Thanks,
Dan.
Beth.